Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash the subscribe button, hit the like, it would be much appreciated. Anyway, the age-old dispute between pay discrepancies between boxing and mixed martial arts. I've noticed this topic has been discussed on Twitter over the last week or so. Basically, after UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Jones had a public bust-up with UFC president Dana White, and one of Jon Jones's gripes was his pay. You know, in his mind, he was being underpaid by the UFC, and he brought up Deontay Wilder as an example. He said that he wasn't earning half the money that Deontay Wilder is earning, and it got people debating, are MMA fighters underpaid? And I really wanted to touch on this subject, not actually primarily on the MMA side of things, but actually coming from the boxing side of things. I wanted to share my 2 cents on this story. What I've noticed over the last few years, and ever since I've been following boxing, a lot of boxing fans like to use fighters' purses as a way to disparage MMA, and they use that as an example why boxing is a better sport. And while yes, boxers are paid more than MMA fighters on the top level, but is that actually a good thing? Is it a good thing for the sport? And is it a good thing for us fans? Maybe boxers are overpaid, who knows? I'll give you an example. Leo Santa Cruz. Leo Santa Cruz is a guy who, for years now, has been criticised for his level of competition. Essentially, apart from Carl Frampton and Abner Mares, his resume is lacking, and he takes a lot of low-level fights. And he is rightly criticised by boxing fans, but a lot of fans don't ask the question, why is this guy taking low-level fights? Why is this guy so content on fighting C-level contenders, some of which aren't even ranked? Why is Leo Santa Cruz so content on doing that? Well, when you're getting paid $1 million to fight someone like Rafael Rivera, why wouldn't you fight these guys? If you're Leo Santa Cruz and you're getting paid $1 million to fight Rafael Rivera, why on earth would you fight Gary Russell Jr. for maybe $2 million if you're lucky? If you're earning $1 million to fight Rivera, why would you fight Gary Russell in that circumstance? You may as well keep on fighting the likes of Rafael Rivera if you're getting paid that much money, because ultimately there's not much risk you're going to lose, and you can keep on topping up your bank account fighting low levels of competition. So what motivation does Leo Santa Cruz have to fight someone like Gary Russell Jr.? And at the time, that would have been a legacy fight. It would have been a unification fight. It's a big fight for his resume. You know, that should be enough, enough motivation to take that fight in itself. But obviously not in the case of Leo Santa Cruz. And maybe that's because this guy is just overpaid. He's overpaid for doing not that much. So if you're asking this guy to step up and really challenge himself, but you're not over-exorbitantly paying him, why would he step up? That's the problem with a lot of fighters. You know, a lot of these guys are paid extremely well for not doing all that much. And that's a reason why a lot of these guys don't step up. Why do you think Tank Davis is content on fighting a 40-year-old Gamboa? Why? Because he's getting paid very well. He's getting paid very well for doing not much. So what motivation do the likes of Tank Davis and Leo Santa Cruz have for actually really stepping up and taking legacy-defining fights? What motivation do these guys really have? Not much. I mean, Mikey Garcia, another example. When you're getting paid $7 million to fight Jesse Vargas, why would Mikey actually move down to 140 pounds in a division to where he actually belongs and try to fight Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez? Again, legacy building fights. Why would he want to do that when he's getting paid $7 million to fight Jesse Vargas, a guy who's arguably not a top 10 welterweight anymore? A lot of these guys are overpaid, and it makes them soft. That's the reality. And we see that far too often now with a lot of fighters. And in my opinion, you know, that's one of the reasons, obviously aside from promotional things, that's one of the reasons a lot of these guys don't want to step up. So Boxing fans can cite boxers' pay all they want as a positive, and yes, in certain circumstances it is. It's great to see fighters get looked after, but at the same time, I don't think it's all lovey-dovey like a lot of boxing fans make out. I do think in cases it has a detrimental effect to the sport and to us fans because it prevents us from getting certain fights that we want to see. And that really irritates me when I see boxing fans, bring up boxers' purses as a positive all the time, when in reality, a lot of the time it's not. And yes, MMA fighters, someone like John Jones, maybe John Jones is underpaid. He brought up the example of Deontay Wilder. Believe it or not, John Jones is actually a bigger star than Deontay Wilder, and Deontay is earning probably more than 2 times that John Jones is earning. So maybe John Jones is underpaid. I mean, if you look at John Jones' pay-per-view numbers, let's compare John Jones and Deontay Wilder. We shall compare when both guys had a dance partner. So we'll compare both fighters' biggest fights, all their biggest rivalries. So John Jones versus Daniel Cormier and Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. These were both guys' biggest fights. John Jones versus Daniel Cormier 1 produced 800,000 pay-per-view buys. John Jones versus Daniel Cormier 2 produced 860,000 pay-per-view buys. Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 1 produced 350,000 pay-per-view buys, and Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 2 produced 850,000 pay-per-view buys. So when you compare both guys' biggest fights, John Jones outperformed Deontay Wilder on both occasions, one by a massive amount and one by only 10,000 buys. And let's compare John Jones and Deontay Wilder when both guys don't have a dance partner. So Luis Ortiz 2 was the only other opponent when Deontay Wilder was on pay-per-view, and he did 250,000 pay-per-view buys. We'll compare that with John Jones' lowest ever pay-per-view rating, and that was 310,000 buys against Alex Gustafsson back in 2013. So John Jones' worst ever performing pay-per-view was still better than Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz 2. And other than that, John Jones has had numerous other fights on pay-per-view where he's cracked 700,000 a couple of times, he's cracked 400,000 numerous times, he's cracked 500,000 a couple of times. So John Jones is without doubt a more proven star than Deontay Wilder, and he clearly sells more. He clearly sells more than Deontay Wilder. So the argument there for John Jones that he's underpaid, I think, is a valid one, considering what he actually sells. But on the flip side, maybe Deontay Wilder is just purely overpaid. Maybe Deontay is just overpaid. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and that's what I tend to agree with. I think a lot of boxers are overpaid, and some MMA fighters are underpaid slightly, but I think if we're talking about pay scales and people getting what they deserve, I think the UFC is a lot more closer to the mark than boxing. And guess what? As a result, they get to see better fights than we do on a more consistent basis. So for boxing fans to criticise Dana White and the UFC, listen, at the end of the day, I'm a fan, and one product is clearly better than the other in terms of giving the fans what they want. So for boxing fans out there to criticise MMA pay, what are you getting for it, man? What are you getting for it? You tell me. You tell me. But this one has really been interesting to mull over. I've got to be honest, it's something I've not really put a lot of thought into, but I see the topic come up on a regular occurrence, and I'm more intrigued to hear your opinions on the matter. Obviously, the audience for this channel are boxing fans, but if we could also get some MMA fans in here sharing their point of view, that would be really interesting as well. But interesting conversation. If you guys could share this video, get it out there, be much appreciated. I would really like some feedback on this one, to be honest. And interesting. Share your thoughts below. Tell me what you guys think on this topic. I'll be very interested to hear your point of view. Anyway, smash the like, hit the subscribe button, all of that good stuff. Be much appreciated. As I said, comment below, share your thoughts, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And I'm Outie 5000. Peace.